you're gonna pee into a jar. So I can't smoke marijuana anymore. Well, it's a hard life.
The marijuana agenda, like the alcohol agenda. But a lot safer.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey!
Spanning the globe to bring you the latest developments in medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja.
We love the herb.
It's time for the marijuana agenda with Russ Belville. Now, here's your host, Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Tuesday, May 23rd, 2017, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. We are back at Delta 9 Studios in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon. Big thanks go out to Corey and Kendra and all the folks from the Cannabis Classic. I had a great time this weekend in Anchorage, and the show from yesterday is finally posted on Marijuana Agenda. If you want to catch a special Toker Talk Radio episode with members of the Alaska cannabis community, that's attached to the most current show post only at mjagenda.com, so check that out while you can. Coming up on today's show, we've got a couple of new segments to debut, starting with Expanded Mind, our look at psychedelic research in America. We're going to be giving you a clip from the Psychedelic Science 2017 conference. Amanda Fielding discusses the future of psychedelics in medicine. Also coming up in the second half hour, we've got our new segment, Shark Sessions with the Marijuana Show. It's the reality show that's been called Shark Tank Meets Marijuana, and their season 2 premiere starts in July on Amazon Prime. We're going to get you caught up with some highlights from season 1 coming up in our second half hour. Also on the show, drug war data mining on the effect of marijuana legalization in neighboring states. But first, we start things off with our cannabis headline news. We've got data from Trump's budget request for the Drug Czar's office.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 2 weeks for the Cannabis Minority Report from the Minority Cannabis Business Association. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
This is your Cannabis Headline News. Brought to you by MarijuanaMoment.net, the complete source for all your marijuana news in one morning newsletter from Marijuana Majority Founder Tom Angel. Subscribe today for free at MarijuanaMoment.net.
This is your Cannabis Headline News for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2017. I'm Russ Belville. President Trump's budget request to Congress for fiscal year 2018 includes the greatest amounts ever requested for two federal programs that are key to anti-marijuana efforts. Included in the increase are a request of $246.5 million for the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas Program, or HITA, and a $91.9 million request for the Drug-Free Communities Support Program. Both are the highest funding amounts ever requested. HITA is the program that funds partnerships between federal and state law enforcement, including the annual report from the Rocky Mountain HITA that uses misleading statistics to frighten Americans about Colorado's marijuana legalization. The Drug-Free Communities Program issues grants to local anti-drug groups that often spend that money on false propaganda campaigns against statewide legalization initiatives. The ONDCP's press release notes that their increased budget request coincides with increased drug abuse in the nation, quote, driven by an increase in marijuana use, end quote. Vermont Governor Phil Scott says he still hasn't decided whether he will allow the state to legalize the recreational use of marijuana, but he won't allow the bill to become law without his signature. Scott's office said Tuesday that the Republican governor will agree to sign the bill into law or veto it. Scott, a Republican, plans to announce Wednesday his decision on the marijuana legalization bill that was passed by the legislature earlier this month. The governor has said he's not philosophically opposed to marijuana legalization, but he has concerns about highway safety and protecting children from marijuana. Under the legislation, small amounts of marijuana would be legal to possess and grow for anyone over age 21. A commission would develop a proposal to tax and regulate marijuana. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey has vetoed a bill legalizing industrial hemp. Proponents of industrial hemp said it would provide Arizona farmers with a new cash crop. Technically, hemp production, like marijuana, remains illegal. But this measure was built on a 2014 federal law that allows state departments of agriculture to begin cultivating industrial hemp in certain circumstances, including research. The governor said his only reason for the veto was the failure of the legislation to provide funding for the State Department of Agriculture to administer the program. Ducey on Monday also signed a bill requiring school districts and charter schools to report the number of suspensions and expulsions that involve possession, use, or sale of illegal drugs. The Oregon House of Representatives Monday passed a bill 51-7 that requires medical marijuana to undergo the same tight-looped tracking as the recreational product. The requirement is the most significant of several tweaks the bill makes to Oregon's marijuana regulations. The Senate passed the bill 23-6 on May 10th. Under existing law, medical producers, processors, wholesalers, and retailers have to self-report to the Oregon Health Authority how much marijuana they have. This bill requires all of that product to be tracked with a barcode or computer chip that follows the plant from a seedling to its final product. The bill exempts medical marijuana cardholders and home growers from the tracking requirements. Aside from increases in adult marijuana possession arrests in border counties, a new working paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that state marijuana legalization has little effect on neighboring states. In the paper, The Cross-Border Spillover Effects of Recreational Marijuana Legalization, Professors Zhuang Hao and Benjamin Cowan from the School of Economic Sciences at Washington State University found that legalization, quote, causes a sharp increase in marijuana possession arrests of border counties relative to non-border counties, end quote. However, the study finds that the increased arrests are almost entirely among adults, saying, quote, legalization has no impact on juvenile marijuana possession arrests, end quote, according to the data, which also show that there is no, quote, evidence that marijuana sale or manufacture arrests of border counties are arrested on net by legalization. Since 2014, when recreational marijuana became legal in Colorado, the arts community has felt the economic pressure from marijuana entrepreneurs. Since legalization, the state has awarded more than 300 licenses for Denver-based grow operations that have been driving up the cost of warehouse space. This has been your Cannabis Headline News for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2017. I'm Russ Belville.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
At Herbie Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about Alzheimer's from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A new Florida study in the journal Molecular and Cellular Neuroscience found that cannabis promotes the growth of healthy new brain tissue. It can slow the effects of Alzheimer's and may in fact be able to halt it entirely. A long-term study by Ohio State University's Professor Gary Wenk concludes that people who regularly use marijuana get Alzheimer's at a much lower rate than others. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
The Marijuana Agenda, like the conservative agenda, minus the hypocrisy.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 2 weeks for Cannabis Q&A with Dr. Mitch Earleywine from the Burning Issues podcast on CannabisRadio.com. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Activism begins with ACT. The Marijuana Agenda features the stories of hardworking grassroots activists working for an end to prohibition in today's activist agenda.
Today for the Activist Agenda, we're beginning a brand new segment, and it's called Expanded Mind, where we take a look at the use of psychedelics for research and medical purposes. For our intro, we begin with Amanda Fielding, who spoke at the Psychedelic Science Research Conference 2017.
So without further ado, I'm going to turn you over to Amanda, who I've
in a very isolated rural situation with nothing much to do except drift around dreaming of possible realities. Later, this developed into a passion for mysticism and the unifying mystical state of different religions. William James and Aldous Huxley had both been family friends of my grandparents, and perhaps the ideas of these men silently permeated the environment. James had declared that compared with what we ought to be, we are only half awake, a sentiment that has resonated with me throughout my life. Huxley's idea about the brain as a reducing valve, constraining consciousness, always made sense to me, and in many ways predicted the findings of our neuroscientific research today. At 16, I left school early because the nuns refused to allow me books on Buddhism. I then studied under the world's leading expert on mysticism, Professor Zehner of All Souls in Oxford. He had recently written Mysticism, Sacred and Profane, which designated his own psychedelic experience as profane. It was some years later, in 1965, that I took my first LSD and realized that he was wrong, and that far from being profane, the experience was spiritually profound. It clearly exposed the different states of consciousness hiding behind the filmiest of screens that William James had described. Unfortunately, in 1966, a malintentioned individual who ran the World Psychedelic Center in Chelsea and who had turned Leary onto his first LSD trip, spiked my coffee with thousands of doses of LSD, which he kept in a famous vinegar bottle. Once I regained my consciousness, I retreated to a hut in the countryside and pulled the fragments of my shattered psyche back together again. This might have put me off psychedelics for life, but by good faith, I soon after met Bart Huges, a Dutch scientist of exceptional insight, who had developed a hypothesis of how LSD worked in the brain and how one can maintain control over one's expanded consciousness by ensuring a sufficient supply of vitamin C and glucose. Because we fell in love, I pulled myself together and dived back into our life enhanced by LSD. In those early days, before Prohibition, we took large doses on a regular basis to enhance and sharpen our cognitive abilities. We wanted to maintain our concentration in order to gain a deeper insight into the human condition and to build up a better understanding of the importance of the ego and of its role in forming a filter between external reality as it is and the internal perception of it. We humans are unique in having developed this ego mechanism, which is based on word recognition. It underlies our brilliance, but also our neurosis and psychopathologies. Barth's hypothesis was that altered states of consciousness brought about by psychedelics are based on an increased volume of blood in the brain capillaries, thereby providing more brain cells with oxygen and glucose. His other major insight was that the first scientific description of the ego as a conditioned reflex mechanism which controls the distribution of blood in the brain. With a better understanding of the ego and the mechanisms underlying the altered states, we were able to use the LSD experience, both to enhance our working abilities and to delve deeply into the psyche and wash out repressed trauma. I felt as if I had passed through a portal of new understanding, both of myself and of humankind. It was then that I decided I'd found my mission in life, to scientifically research these changing states of consciousness and their potential value for the individual and humanity, and to integrate this knowledge into modern society. However, as a female with a vision, but no letters after her name and little money, how can one change global drug policy and undertake controversial scientific research into psychedelics and consciousness? Answer: become a foundation. So, in 1996, I did just that and set up the Foundation to Further Consciousness, later renamed the Beckley Foundation. I gained credibility by getting the best scientists in the field onto my scientific advisory board, starting with Albert Hofmann. My first scientific endeavor to investigate the truth of our hypothesis was in 1998 with Franz Vollenweider. Using PET, we investigated the changes in blood supply in the brain brought about by psilocybin. The results were positive, but the paper, sadly, was never published. However, in these early days, my main focus was on policy change, because psychedelics had become so taboo that it was almost impossible to find scientists or institutions willing to get involved and to face the regulatory barriers to conducting the research, particularly if there was a possibility of positive findings which could ruin their career. I set about organizing a series of international seminars at the House of Lords, to which I invited leading scientists, politicians, and experts. Key policy issues were debated that shed light on the harms of the present prohibitionist approach and how best to develop new policies to reduce harms, improve health, cut costs, and respect human rights. Through the Beckley Foundation, we produced reports and books and set up organizations, which later became independent. We presented at the UN and advised international governments. Slowly, attitudes began to change. The devastation caused by the unintended fallout of the war on drugs was far beyond the damage of the drugs themselves. I think there's been no other civil issue which has caused such unnecessary suffering worldwide. The drug laws, which were created by the US through the mouth of the United Nations, were based on misconceptions and political expediencies. Although they have shown themselves to be a total failure, they are set in stone like the Book of Mormon. Hundreds of billions of dollars are spent each year, prisons are filled, tens of thousands die, corruption is rampant, and the flow of drugs just increases. There has been no commitment to reviewing, let alone reversing, these policies. I watched the drug war take root in the early 70s and grow like a cancer through the flesh of society. It is a clear reflection of the mistakes that man can make because of the interference of a misinformed ego. Surprisingly, however, the US, which prohibits the rest of the world from reforming its drug policies, has made great strides itself in reforming cannabis policy, a testament to the fact that change can and will occur. Decades from now, people will puzzle at the absurdity of our current drug laws and be appalled by the suffering they have caused. Among the sources of suffering is the fact that research into the healing potential of psychedelics and cannabis has virtually been blocked, so millions of people have been deprived of psychedelic-assisted therapy, which could have improved or healed their conditions. For many years, I found myself caught in a catch-22. Policy reform was impossible without scientific evidence to support it, and scientific research was impossible without policy reform.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. Subscribe now for free at mjagenda.com.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
This is Cannabis Facts from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org, supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. In 1937, the second most prescribed medicine, marijuana, was banned. It wasn't about marijuana. The paper, oil, and chemical industries lobbied to end hemp farming. No longer labor intensive, an acre of hemp produced more quality paper than 4 acres of trees. Plastics and fibers could be produced from a plant. Hemp can even produce 10 times the energy of today's ethanol. As marijuana prohibition ends, many states now allow farmers to again grow hemp. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to process America's hemp crop at hempinc.com.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking.
Learn more at mjagenda.com.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for Cannabis Sports Medicine from the Gridiron Cannabis Coalition. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Today in the Data Mines, we want to take a look at a story I briefly mentioned in the Cannabis Headline News that told us that marijuana legalization has little effect on the neighboring states. And aside from increases in adult marijuana possession arrests, and only in the border counties near legalized states, this new working paper from the National Bureau of Economic Research finds that the state marijuana legalization in Washington and Colorado had little to no effect on the neighboring states. Now, for Washington, they looked at Oregon and Idaho. For Colorado, they had more states to choose from. So a lot of their data is very heavily focused on what happened to the states near Colorado. But in this paper, and by the way, the paper is called The Cross-Border Spillover Effects of Recreational Marijuana Legalization. These two professors from the School of Economic Sciences at Washington State, Zhuang Hao and Benjamin Cowan, found that legalization, quote, causes a sharp increase in marijuana possession arrests of border counties relative to non-border counties. If a county shares a physical border with a legalized state, it experiences an increase in marijuana possession arrests of roughly 30%. However, we don't know what that means necessarily, and it's important to note that these increased arrests in the border counties are almost entirely adults. The youth arrest rate stays the same, or at least it changes with respect to the same changes you're finding statewide in other counties and nationwide for that matter. So It doesn't seem to affect the youth arrest rate, but it does seem to affect the adult arrest rate. And they did some interesting parsing of the data by mapping out the interstate highways and freeway systems out of Colorado and out of Washington State, the counties nearby. And they theorized that for the people in the border counties, adults, it's, economically easy enough to drive across the state line, get some legal weed, and drive back. And that might be leading this increase that they find. The researchers wrote, quote, legalization has no impact on juvenile marijuana possession arrests and no evidence that marijuana sales or marijuana manufacture, that would be cultivation, arrests of border counties are affected on net by legalization, end quote. So no increase in sales, no increase in the black market that they're always worried about, no increase in the cultivation arrests that they're always worried about. Now, while the counties that are bordering the legalized states saw an increase in adult possession arrests, there was also an interesting finding from these researchers that the counties farther away from the border increased a decline in adult possession arrests. Interesting that the arrests in the rest of the state near a legalized state actually declined. Another interesting find from this paper is that impaired driving statistics improved as well. The authors concluded, quote, DUI arrests decreased markedly for both border counties and non-border counties after legalization, end quote. Now, it is important to note that there's a lot of restrictions on how well you can study this sort of thing. We don't know that the arrests have gone up or gone down because of more people using or because it's more people getting caught. Or has legalization mean fewer people getting caught in certain circumstances? The authors cautioned about this. They say you can't necessarily tie the increase in border arrests to increased trafficking of marijuana across the state lines. They say, quote, following legalization, police officers might adopt new techniques or use more resources toward cracking down on what they perceive to be more illegal marijuana possession, end quote. And this is something I've always illustrated with an analogy of fishing, right? You go to the stream on Tuesday to go fishing and you catch 2 fish. You go to the stream on Wednesday to go fishing, you catch 20 fish. Does that mean there's more fish in the stream on Wednesday? Or did you bring better bait on Wednesday? Did you bring a net on Wednesday? Did you find a better fishing hole on Wednesday? Did you spend more time fishing on Wednesday? There's all sorts of reasons why you might have caught more fish the next day. Same thing goes for the cops. They may be catching more people with marijuana possession because now the state next door has legalized it, and that's the first thing they're looking for and the first thing they're trying to get you to admit when you cross the border and they get you in a traffic stop. So the authors didn't find more police officers being hired in the bordering counties. So that kind of starts to suggest that, yeah, maybe they are just trying harder to catch people with weed. In conclusion, the authors suggest that marijuana legalization could cause an increase in law enforcement and criminal justice costs for those neighboring states. Well, perhaps those states would be better served by joining their neighbor and legalize marijuana for adult use and save those law enforcement costs and earn some tax revenue to boot. How about that? One more piece of interesting data that was included in the appendix of this paper, some of the tables that they had included a table showing Washington State's retail marijuana prices since legalization. And I just wanted to bring this up because if you'll remember in 2011, 6 years ago, when Washington State was gearing up with I-502, there were a bunch of people in Washington, some of them named Steve, who were telling us that, oh, we can't legalize under I-502. There'll be $600 ounces. The state will end up charging you $600 for an ounce of marijuana. It'll be ridiculous. You'll have $600 marijuana. Well, here's a look at the graph of that situation. And as you can see, sorry about that, folks. Didn't expect that to be happening. I don't know where that was sitting. But in this item here, you can see that the price per gram of cannabis in Washington State, which was well above $30 a gram when they first started, is now below $10 a gram for the past few months that have been cited in this data. So the price has fallen by 2/3 since the advent of legalization. We're now sitting in the $250 ounce range, not the $600 ounce range. I just wanted to make sure everybody was up to date on that. The $600 ounce prediction doesn't seem to have come true. All right, we got to take a break, and when we come back, another new segment here on the show, the introduction of our Shark Sessions segment, where we learn all about the ganjapreneurs fighting to make it in the marijuana industry.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Hey everybody, it's Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
It's time for cannabis facts about teen drug use from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A recent survey by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control indicates that in states that have legalized medical marijuana, the rate of marijuana consumption among high school students has not increased. In fact, in legal states like Colorado, teen use has actually decreased significantly. It's simply no longer a big deal for teenagers in legal states. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
The Marijuana Agenda. Like the liberal agenda, but with profits. Ka-ching.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for Cultivator's Corner with Jorge Cervantes from marijuanagrowing.com. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
This is Shark Sessions, brought to you by The Marijuana Show at themarijuanashow.com. The marijuana industry is the fastest growing industry in North America. Learn from the sharks who are betting on the future of cannabis and from the entrepreneurs who are creating the next big thing in marijuana. Executive producers Karen Paul and Wendy Robbins bring you the best in cannabis business advice from The Marijuana Show, featured here in this edition of Shark Sessions.
All right, welcome everybody to our first edition of Shark Sessions here on the Marijuana Agenda, featuring the best of the Marijuana Show, which has already had its first season and is beginning its second season premiere in July, exclusively on Amazon Prime Video streaming. So check that out. It's been called the Shark Tank for Marijuana Entrepreneurs. And to get you ready for season 2, we've got this highlight reel of the best of season 1 of the Marijuana Show.
Competing for the chance of a lifetime, the new show looking for pot entrepreneurs right here in Colorado.
Dozens of people pitching their ideas for products and services that change the pot industry and make them marijuana millionaires.
Have you heard the news? There's a new doctor in town, and she is making a new brand of bitters. But watch out, these aren't your grandma's bitters.
I'm here all the way from Washington, D.C. to introduce to you Hemp Butter All-in-One.
We're going to change the way people grow marijuana.
So my idea is a convenience food delivery service phone app.
We would like to have you help us open the first country club for the cannabis user.
Anyone in cannabis can tell you that this industry changes day over day, and If you're not quick and you're not nimble, you're not going to survive.
Innovating the marijuana industry with the agriculture pods, that is the springboard to a much, much, much bigger plan.
So how much do you need?
500,000 to $1 million is what he wrote.
No, that's way out of whack.
I was an animator. Back in the 90s, I worked on X-Men, Batman, Fantastic Four,
We love Batman.
And my fear is that I don't make something of this.
This here is Hydrolock. It is a nanopolymer. Once you add water to it, it retains 1,000 times its weight in water. And I am directing this towards the grill industry to preserve water.
I think it's a...
Callback.
Yeah, callback.
Yeah, we'd like to call you back.
Call you back.
You are called back.
I'm called back. So I'd like you to approach 100 people in a week in terms of just retail stores.
Oh, I can do that overnight.
250 testimonials.
250?
Yeah, we just upped the ante, 250.
250.
I like it.
All right.
Hey, go big or go home, right?
That's right.
Go big or go home.
Hi, friend. Welcome. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Come on over here. Come on over, get you a pop. Everybody knows I'm rolling it up. Come on over, get you a pop. Everybody knows I'm rolling it up. Rolling it up, holding it up, smoking it up. I'm talking it up, rolling it up, holding it up, smoking it up.
We are so proud of you guys. You are the very first contestants on the Marijuana Show. You've made history.
It's taken a lot for me to be here. In the span of 2 months, I lost my wife, my car got stolen, my truck got impounded, I lost my shop, and I lost my investor / benefactor who passed away. I'm Michael Ring. I own a company called Cleantech Systems. My project is Cleantech Agriculture, converting 53-foot trailers into agriculture pods, digitally controlled, renewable energy based. And so in the span of 2 months, I went from almost being into the position of changing the world to having nothing. Something no one knows about me, or most people don't know, is that I'm an inventor through to my core. I have about 200 patents that are available to file from this point in time.
I was able to overcome my fear of rejection by making it on the Marijuana Show. Wendy and Karen believed in me enough. They sent me on a challenge to pitch my product to different locations. So I just hit the block running, and the overwhelming positive feedback that I got made me realize that this is something that I should be proud of. I have nothing to be afraid of. I have other people that believe in me. I need to believe in myself. My business is Hemp Butter All-in-One. It's a cannabis-based multi-purpose moisturizer that you can use on hair, hands, body, and more. I need $82,000. I'm willing to share this percentage of my company. What is a fair percentage for me to offer where I'm not cheating myself or potential investor?
We are currently in a old Airstream and just left a big house to make this come true.
Is marijuana a Schedule I drug under the Federal Controlled Substance Act of 1970?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and this is a two-part because they can steal on this. What makes a drug subject to Schedule I classification? And you can consult. You gotta hold, they get a chance to answer.
No medical benefit, habit forming.
No medical benefit, that's the rationale behind it.
Yeah.
So, go grab a Benji. Very well. Now, we all know that even though it's classified as a Schedule I drug, it's just not the case. There are medical benefits to it.
This is for my beautiful daughter, Namani. And Namani, I just want to let you know that I love you so much, and I'm doing this for you, and you are my inspiration and my drive.
So what are you going to do with the investment?
So what I'm going to do with the investment is it's going towards startup costs. We're as well going to be having 2 grows for recreational and medical marijuana.
My mother died in my arms 12 years ago of colon cancer. I've lost just about every best friend I've had in the last several years. And I know I'm going to lose my fiance and I'm going to lose my brother.
As a disabled person and as somebody who's been on welfare, I now know
the organizations that I can help, and I will do really good things with the money.
Question for Tony. Why does your company have high growth potential?
High growth potential because it crosses all the lines. It goes from biking to guns to cigarettes to unmentionables.
Smoking it up, I'm choking it
Here
up.
they come. Look at this. Looks like they're rounding that last ball. So a lot of my coworkers and a lot of my friends, they always ask me, Patrick, what drives you? What motivates you? Why do you work so hard? And a lot of it comes down to my family history. Long story short, both of my parents are refugees of the Vietnam War. My dad, he was on the second to last 747 out of Saigon Airport before it fell. And my mom, fifth child out of 10, after the war was over, they fled the country on a boat. And they were out at sea for 3 weeks with nothing but buckets of water and bananas. And both of my parents did everything they could to come here and provide their children and their grandchildren an opportunity to live the American dream. Life's short. We pass through this way once, and I'm going to make sure that I make the most of it. In the state of Washington, they project over 200,000 pounds of recreational cannabis alone, not counting medicinal, recreational cannabis, will go from producer to processor to retailer.
Sure.
At $5,000 a pound wholesale, we're talking $1 billion. If $1 billion of wholesale cannabis flows through just the state of Washington alone, and we have 70, 80, 90% of that market, and we can proxy 2% transaction fee for every single dollar that goes through that system, you're talking about $20 million from one state alone.
How much funding are you looking for, and what will it be used for?
So because we're rolling out with 3 new products by the end of this year, we're looking for anywhere between 3 to 5 million.
Thank you. Hi there. Welcome. Woo! Fooled you. Didn't know. Surprise. We're your investors.
You're able to sell in 50 states, and obviously the market is expanding very quickly medically, 23 states, so we have to think outside of ourselves locally. So I would be interested in having those conversations with you and maybe bringing some people to the table.
That would be just incredible. Okay, so now you know I'm gonna cry.
Dude, if you film me, I'm gonna say some really fucked up stuff that's gonna not be airable, and I mean it.
I'm just doing my job. I'm really sorry for that.
I want to walk away from you.
My journey's so long, and I just really want someone to just like draw me a bunch of money and say, "Here, Jim, like, let's do it." I'm not around so much anymore. But...
Hopefully, you'll be the next marijuana millionaire.
Well, I promise God, if you let this happen for me, that I would do a lot of good things with the money.
Marijuana Show is available at themarijuanashow.com. Season 2 premiere coming up in July. Check it out at Amazon Prime Video. You can also find Season 1 episodes of The Marijuana Show available on YouTube. You can follow the links from themarijuanashow.com.
This episode was produced as part of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville, the daily news and interview podcast covering the world of medical cannabis, adult marijuana, industrial hemp, and spiritual ganja. Subscribe now for free at mjagenda.com.
The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association and the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
Hey, this is Willie Nelson for NORML. And I smoke pot and I like it a lot. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer than alcohol. There's nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting those who smoke marijuana responsibly. To learn what you can do to help, contact NORML at norml.org or call toll-free 888-67-NORML.
The Marijuana Agenda, like the pharmaceutical agenda, without all the side effects, overdose deaths, insurance.
Side effects may include nausea, dry mouth, and constipation. Dry mouth, constipation, indigestion, and abdominal pain, which can occur without warning and may cause death.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for the Freedom Leaf Preview with Steve Bloom from Freedom Leaf Magazine. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Total war against public enemy number one.
10 federal criminal penalties for up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
Marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug.
Legalization is just another word for surrender.
I experimented with marijuana and didn't inhale.
This is not medicine. This is a Cheech and Chong show.
Encourage people to use less drugs. I inhale. That was the point.
I think it would be a mistake to legalize.
Negative reports coming out of Colorado. Good people don't smoke marijuana.
Just in time for 420 this year, the National District Attorneys Association released a position paper on marijuana that trumps up the threat of stone drivers and babies on edibles and laments when police have to return illegally seized pot and generally acts like the district attorneys had never heard that a majority of U.S. voters approve of legalization. Position paper falls short of explicitly asking for a federal crackdown, but it hints at it through repeated emphasis that, quote, federal drug enforcement policy regarding marijuana should be applied consistently across the nation to maintain respect for the rule of law, end quote. And that's not really a surprise. Did we expect the prosecutors of America to endorse not enforcing federal laws? But the surprise is how the prosecutors made their case for their position. One concern they have about legalization is the fear of stoned mayhem on the freeway, or as I call it, SMOF. Quote, since a majority of states have legalized marijuana for medical and or recreational use, they write, marijuana-impaired driving cases will continue to present unique challenges for prosecutors, end quote. Well, why since? Look, legalization doesn't invent stone drivers. Cars and weed have been around since the beginning of the 20th century. As the NDAA explains, quote, a driver who exhibits clues of impairment, along with evidence of marijuana, could be successfully prosecuted for impaired driving, end quote. Right, and that doesn't change when the possession of marijuana is legal. Now, to their credit, NDAA makes it clear that testing for marijuana and metabolites in blood and urine is a fool's errand, stating, quote, scientific studies have not yet demonstrated support for marijuana per se levels similar to alcohol, end quote. But then they go and flop when they state, quote, marijuana use has been shown to increase crash risk, end quote. Ah, man, for years now, prohibitionists have relied on this meta-analysis published in the British Medical Journal that supposed that there was a doubling of crash risk in drivers who test positive for marijuana. The problem with that statistic is it did not correct for age and gender. Look, ask any car insurer who the worst drivers in the world are, and they'll tell you male drivers between the ages of 19 and 24. Well, guess who consumes the most marijuana the most often in America? Over 1 in 5 people aged 19 to 23 consume marijuana monthly, and at age 24, it's at 18.1%. No other age breaks the 20% rate. 19 to 23 are all over 20%. Age 24 is at 18.1%. 1 out of 5 people that age are smoking pot monthly. And when you break it down by gender, 1 in 10 men smoke pot monthly, but just 1 in 16 women smoke pot monthly. Even the feds have stopped trying to equate this marijuana crash risk. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration found recently that, quote, better controlled studies have found lower or no elevated crash risk estimates, end quote. All right, well, the other concern we get from the National District Attorneys Association is the tried and false, what about the children, or WOTC. Quote, legalization of marijuana clearly sends a message to youth that marijuana is not dangerous and increases youth access to marijuana, end quote. Well, if the youth are getting any message about legal weed, it seems to be business as usual. Washington State says, quote, rates of teen marijuana use have remained steady despite the changing landscape, end quote. Colorado says, quote, youth marijuana use remains relatively unchanged, end quote. And Oregon says, quote, recent trends in youth use have been stable, end quote. Teens also aren't finding any greater access to marijuana. Since 1975, the Monitoring the Future survey has asked 12th graders how difficult it would be to score some pot. The rate of teens responding easy or fairly easy had been as high as 90% and never dipped below 80% until the year after 4 states had legal marijuana. Now, folks, this is just common sense, really. Teens' access to weed isn't through stores, it's through the guy who deals in the parking lot behind shop class. It's older guys like me who gain increased access through legalization, as evidenced by senior use increasing by over half since legalization. The rest of their position paper touches on these old marijuana scares, like the gateway theory, debunked since 1999, pot causes IQ loss, debunked by studying twins, weed leads to dropout, unemployment, welfare, and dissatisfaction. Funny how a criminal record can do that. And legal pot has increased poison control calls, since now people can be honest about what made them or their kid or their dog sick. Even though such poison control calls are down in Colorado following a public education campaign on marijuana edibles. The district attorneys are willing to promote all these reefer madness talking points to help obfuscate this truth that's becoming clearer day by day. This nation has a mass incarceration problem, and it's fueled largely by the unchecked power of those district attorneys to prosecute drug possession. In the new book, Locked In, criminal professor John Pfaff notes that between 2000 and 2014, our prison population only increased by 100,000, but 9.6 million new prisoners were minted. It's not the long-term prisoners that are the problem, it's the short-term, non-violent offenders that shuffle in and out of the system, permanently marked as criminals for the next employment or educational aid or housing application. It's those offenders, those drug possessors, that make up the bulk of these district attorneys' workload. Research shows that 95% of all criminal cases are resolved with guilty pleas through plea bargaining. The prosecutors pile on those felony charges so that they can have more chips to bargain with in the plea bargain process. And if we legalize marijuana, then how will these 30,000 district attorneys pile on all the extra charges? The next time they want to write a position paper on marijuana, instead of copying Kevin Sabet, they ought to talk to me. That's all the time we got for this hour. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and SoundCloud. And follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.
Name something that gets passed around.
A joint.
A joint.
Now, streaming live on the Marijuana Agenda.
What are you people? On dope?
It's time for Toker Talk Radio.
Hey, this is great, man.
The voice of the Marijuana Nation.
Marijuana is listed as a Schedule 1 drug. That is absurd.
Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ. That's 650-534-2565.
What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel?
Hey, man. Am I driving okay?
Toker Talk Radio is your chance to make your voice heard in the Marijuana Nation.
They're walking on their pants with their cap on backwards, listening to Enema Man and Snoopy Poop Dog.
Send that message with clarity that good people don't smoke marijuana.
Now let's get to Toking and Talking with your host, Russ Belville.
Hey, welcome everybody. Great to be back here in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon. Back from Anchorage, Alaska, where on Sunday and Monday, they had like Portland winter weather. It was like 50 degrees and windy and cold and rainy and felt like home. Meanwhile, back here in Portland, they were having like sunny and 90 degrees. It was crazy weather here. And it's beautiful today, still sunny outside. And for those of you who've been following the antics of the 4 hot, naked, underage chicks here at Delta 9 House, our chickens, they're now outdoors. It's warm enough that they're all outdoors. They got their own coop. They got their own little chicken run. I'm turning into a gentleman farmer, I guess. Coming up on this hour in Toker Talk Radio, we got to talk about Nevada breaking an Oregon record. We'll tell you what that record is. We also have to call the Wambulance. Yeah, time to call the Wambulance for the mayor of Boston, Marty Walsh. Oh, he's so upset. Oh, poor little baby. Poor little baby. We'll tell you all about why when we get to our second block. And then in our third block, oh my goodness, we have some reefer madness to debunk for you today. We're going to have a lot of fun with this one. Celebrating the ignominious anniversary of the birth of Harry J. Anslinger last Saturday. Tell you all about that coming up in the last segment. Now, as we introduce this segment, a couple of things off the top of my head. Number one, from the it doesn't matter who you vote for, they're both the same files. You heard that this Sheriff David Clark was being floated as Secretary of Homeland Security. If you don't know who this guy is, he's like the Black Joe Arpaio. You know, remember Sheriff Joe down there in Phoenix? So he's out of Milwaukee, and he's kind of controversial, kind of known as a black Republican tough on crime sheriff who's anti-Black Lives Matter. That's kind of interesting. And he's anti-sanctuary cities, you know, with the whole immigration thing. He'd have crackdowns on that, you know. So he's been floated as a possible head of the Department of Homeland Security. And so the latest on this is that there's some charges that he plagiarized some of his works that he might have copied and pasted. He might have plagiarized from somebody. And the tweet that I saw that came across was that now Sheriff Clark was considering withdrawing his name and might not be the Secretary of Homeland Security. And I'm thinking, for plagiarism, right? Like that's what gets this guy kicked out. not that he thinks that Black Lives Matter. Literally, this guy said that Black Lives Matter would join with ISIS to take down America. That wasn't enough. No, he's fine for that, right? Jeez. But no, don't copy and paste something from somebody else. Now, I'm not making light of plagiarism. Plagiarism is a serious thing. I'm against it, right? But come on. There's like, on the list of things that are wrong with this guy, it's like on page 17. Jiminy Christmas. Another thing I wanted to bring up. What is it with people leaving their weed away in places, giving their weed away? I mean, I'm all for giving weed away, but have you seen these latest stories? Okay, so the first one was a story came out of Redding, California, at a Winco Foods, big old warehouse shopping center, right? And it's a pile of weed dumped in the parking lot, like in a parking space, big enough. I'm looking at that pile of weed in the picture and I'm saying, well, that's a couple pounds of weed, at least. Now it looks like trims and sticks and all that kind of stuff, but still large pile of pot just sitting out there in the Winco parking lot. This woman, her name's Erin Ryan. She snapped a photo, posted it on Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and Facebook, I guess. And she's gone viral now. The photo's gone viral because there's this picture of this cop standing there guarding the pile of weed that was dumped in the Winco parking lot. And then there's another story. This one's coming out of Minnesota, Maplewood Police in Minnesota. A dude donated clothes to like one of these, Goodwill type of things. Once Upon a Child was the place. And they go through this bag of clothes and they discovered a large Ziploc bag containing 60 small bindles, each carrying about 2 grams of pot. So 60 little 2-gram plastic baggies of weed that this guy gave away with, inadvertently left with his clothes that he gave to the clothing place. And there was another story. It was like out of Washington State. This was a while ago, a few months ago. But there was a guy that had donated, a cooler? And in the cooler, there was a bunch of weed, right? Remember, folks, only users lose drugs. We'll be back right after this.
You're listening to The Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Looking for the 420 friendliest way to visit beautiful legal Potland, Oregon?
I'm Lori Duckworth, inviting you to come stay with us at Delta 9 House and Studios.
You get your own private room with queen bed and access to our high-speed Wi-Fi, premium entertainment system, and more.
We'll even cook you breakfast. Look us up on Facebook at Delta 9 House.
That's facebook.com/Delta9House. Delta 9 House is booked through Airbnb.com. City of Portland permit number 17-159855.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
The Marijuana Agenda. Kevin Sabet's boogeyman since 2012.
You have offended my family, and you have offended Shaolin Temple.
Yes, might have gotten away with it, too. If it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dog.
I'm Russ Belville from The Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for our Government at Work, the latest in cannabis reform at the local, state, federal, and international level. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Hello, Mr. Man. Hi. I'm working. I'm sorry. No food till this is done. It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
Welcome back, everybody. 9 after the hour here on a gorgeous day in beautiful legal Potland, Oregon. In addition to the chicken coop that we got, we've also got our fine garden growing. We got peppers. We're growing some peppers. We're growing some tomatoes. We're growing some beans. Growing some cannabis. Got a lot of stuff in our garden, and that's taking shape, and it's really cool to have that happening as well as the weather gets good. Farm fresh eggs, farm fresh peppers, farm fresh veggies, farm fresh weed. And if you want to have a little bit of that, you want to come visit me here at Delta 9 House and Studios. You've heard the promotion, but check it out online at delta9house.com. That's our Facebook page. You can also book the rooms directly by going to indica.delta9.house or sativa.delta9.house. And the summer weekends are going to fill up real quick. You want to make sure you book them as soon as you can. We are still a perfect 100% 5-star rated Airbnb. Everybody has rave reviews about their stays here at Delta 9 House, and we hope you can join us sometime. I'll even cook you waffles. I cooked some waffles this morning. They were delicious. All right, let's get to some of the marijuana news that's going on. And here in the state of Oregon, we're finding our records continue to get broken. Doggone it. When it comes to marijuana, we're losing our status here in the state of Oregon. I will say the state of Oregon still maintains the lowest price in the nation for marijuana, both black market and legit market. Lowest price in the nation for marijuana, bar none. Absolutely. Especially coming back from Alaska. Oh my God. If you saw Toker Talk Radio yesterday, and if you missed it, by the way, it's up on YouTube, on our Marijuana Agenda channel. You can also get it at mjagenda.com for the audio. Speaking with Liz Doobie and Johnny Gray yesterday, and they were telling me how weed in Alaska is going for like $23 a gram and higher, $30 a gram and such. They're talking about how shatter and concentrates are going for $80 to $90 a gram. Now, everything's more expensive in Alaska, granted, but this was like way beyond the pale. So there is a huge market opportunity in Alaska for someone who can take that on. And if you're interested in some of the vagaries, the ins and outs of what's going on in Alaska, it's kind of fascinating. Like, number one thing I learned is they don't have a Department of Agriculture. Which, if you think about it, makes sense, right? What do you need a Department of Ag for in Alaska unless you're farming snow? And number two, they have no commercial medical program, right? And it's weird to me because Alaska and Oregon are quite similar in that Alaska and Oregon both decrimmed in the early 70s, Oregon 73, Alaska 1975 through the Raven decision. That was a Supreme Court decision in Alaska that ruled that the privacy protections in the Alaska Constitution are so strong, they trump the state's need to bug you if you've got less than a quarter a pound or fewer than 25 plants in your home. That's been the case in Alaska since 75, folks. I mean, they've legalized and all, but since 1975, if you had your own home marijuana garden and kept your weed at home, nobody could do shit about it. It was still illegal. Get caught outside the home, there's a problem. Still illegal that if they had another reason to come in the home and found that, it could be a problem. Like there's a domestic violence call or a fire or something, they could still bust you for it. But the weed itself was not a big enough concern to trump your privacy rights at home in Alaska. So Oregon and Alaska both decrim around in the early 70s. Oregon and Alaska both passed medical marijuana in 1998, and Oregon and Alaska both passed legalization in 2014. But Alaska has been just so far behind. They've not had a medical system. Their law, they never set up a caregiver system or a third-party grower system or a dispensary system. Really, their medical marijuana was, oh, you're sick? Okay, grow yourself some plants and we'll leave you alone. Well, what if I can't grow plants? Well, there you go, whatever, right? So Alaska's been way behind, and Oregon and Alaska both legalized in 2014. We went from legalizing in November of 2014 to having our first recreational sales in October of 2015. So it took us 11 months to go from the vote to a legal purchase, recreational purchase. They're just now barely getting their legal sales off the ground. And the people I met, I was MC of their panels there, their educational panels in Alaska. And I met the guys that run the place in Fairbanks, Pacololo Supply Company. And they were talking about how they're not looking at expanding. They just want to be able to have enough product to stay open. Like they're like saying they would open from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. 3 days a week. That's all they could open up to keep it open. They literally have like a light outside their place, red light, green light, as to whether or not they'd be open. 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, and talked about how they'd have people camped out waiting in line to get in at 3 a.m. So 12 hours before they open, waiting in line. Now, granted, in the summertime in Fairbanks, the sun is out all the time, but this was back in the winter, so it's dark all the time, and the temperature's 40 below zero. People are waiting in 40 below zero to get in for 3 hours worth of sales. So Alaska's been way, way behind, right? But now we're finding other states that are coming online legally are starting to lap Oregon. The first one was California, because one of the records I was really proud of about Oregon is we had the greatest support in passing a statewide marijuana legalization initiative at 56.11%. Well, California beat us in 2016. They passed it with like 57%, something like that. I was like, well, we no longer have the greatest support record, although we can say we have the greatest support in a midterm election. Had we run that in 2016, we might have broken 60, right? So we lost that record. Well, now, according to this piece in the Daily Beast, Nevada is going to break our record of 11 months from vote to first legal sale, because on July 1st is when the legal sales will begin in Nevada. Now, that means they're going to go 8 months legal sales. They go from November to July, November vote in 2016 to July 1st, 2017 sales. However, I think there's a technicality. I think there should be an asterisk on this, because there's no way Nevada could have pulled this off without the guidance from Oregon. And here's why. In the state of Oregon, we passed our legalization, Measure 91, 56.11%. And in that, in passing that, we had the legalization take effect on July 1st. That was the Burnside Burn we put together. July 1st, 2015, you could possess, you could grow, but you couldn't buy anywhere or sell anywhere. Until the next year, they were thinking the recreational licenses, they might get around to them by October 2016. So we were going to look at a possible 15 months where we were legal to possess and grow, but not legal to buy anywhere. And the oddest thing happened. This senator from Eastern Oregon, who was against legalization and who fought to get this, what we call the West Idaho Compromise, he fought so that the eastern counties could ban pot businesses without a vote. That guy, Ted Ferrioli, senator from Eastern Oregon, brought up the point that, wait a minute, if we legalize in July 1st, and there's 15 months where they got nowhere to buy from, they're either going to buy from the black market, or they're going to cross the river and go to Vancouver, Washington and buy legal weed there, or they're going to game the medical system somehow and get weed from there. So Ferrioli said, look, we got these regulated medical marijuana dispensaries. Why don't we just let the recreational people shop there? And we were like, yeah, great. That'd be fantastic. So we did that, and that's how we got that record of going from vote to 11 months. Well, now Nevada is doing the same thing. Their July 1st thing isn't their new recreational sellers. It's another deal. I think this is another deal where they're allowed to sell out of the medical shops, or the medical shops are getting recreational, are moving into the recreational market. Had Oregon not moved forward with that, I don't think they'd have jumped ahead like they're jumping ahead. Although it's interesting to watch what's going on in Nevada because they, with their medical dispensaries in 2013, passed it with reciprocity provision. So Nevada's medical marijuana dispensaries could accept any card holder from any state. And this has kind of primed the pump, so to speak, so that they already are ready for a recreational turnover. They've already dealt with dealing with lots of customers and having to keep the shelves stocked and so forth. So it's going to be easier for them to move on into this new recreational market now that they have the licensing to do so. But Nevada, unlike Oregon, has done this mostly with an eye toward money and very little consideration toward patients or consumers. Because, of course, the 2013 law that brought in their dispensaries took out their ability to home grow. Nevada patients had had that law since, I think, 2000 was the Nevada law, had been able to cultivate their own cannabis plants or have a caregiver do it for them. But once the dispensaries came into existence, there now became a 25-mile halo rule around those medical marijuana dispensaries. People that were currently growing could keep growing.
You don't scare me. I got chunks of guys like you in my stool.
We'll have to go on about that after the break because it is 4:20 here in the Pacific time zone, and according to our strict union mandate, we must take a safety briefing. So I hope you're safe out there. We'll be right back.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about Alzheimer's from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A new Florida study in the journal Molecular and Cellular Neuroscience found that cannabis promotes the growth of healthy new brain tissue. It can slow the effects of Alzheimer's and may in fact be able to halt it entirely. A long-term study by Ohio State University's Professor Gary Wenk concludes that people who regularly use marijuana get Alzheimer's at a much lower rate than others. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 2 weeks for the Marijuana Policy Insider with Marijuana Policy Project. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Tjena, jag heter David, PKA Dirtball. Vi ska röka hela tiden, alla år.
It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're live here on Toker Talk Radio. Checking out the chat room where Jackie is asking, are there archives through TuneIn Radio? Not yet. No. So here's the deal. I've moved to a new platform. It's called Libsyn, and it's awesome in that it publishes to everything, right? It goes to iHeartRadio, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play Music, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, SoundCloud. Where else? Oh, and the webpage itself. So it takes care of everything for me. The downside is it charges me storage space. And the platform I'm on has enough storage space per month for me to put the first hour up online. But if I put the second hour up online, it's going to cost me more money. So as I build back up and get more sponsors and get all that stuff running, then yes, in the future, we will have that whole VIP thing and we'll have all the content you can download and all that fun stuff. But I got to make it financially possible first. So stay tuned and keep on token. Now, you can get this whole 2 hours on the YouTube replay. So if you go to mjagenda.com and click through to the MJ Agenda YouTube page, then yeah, you can do this whole 2 hours. It's all up there because YouTube doesn't charge me any money. All right. Question was, is program available live on TuneIn? No, we're only live on YouTube at this point. Not live on TuneIn, not live on iHeart, any of those, just podcast on those. Only live place you get us right now is on YouTube. For now. Again, as more money comes in and we're possibly even able to add staff, then yes, we will do those kind of things. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it. And keep telling more and more people to check out mjagenda.com and we can keep building this. All right, let me get back to what I was talking about, I should say. The Nevada thing, where they're going to have legal recreational sales, adult use sales on July 1st. Just a few weeks away. And that means they're going to set the record of going from the legalization vote to first legal sales in 8 months. And that's great. But again, there's a lot of problems with the legalization in Nevada. First of which is this halo rule, right? To me, it ain't legalization unless I can possess, grow, and buy weed. I want to be able to have the weed that I smoke. I want to be able to grow some weed. And then if I can't, I want to be able to buy it. I can't do those three things. It's not done yet. Well, it's never done until it's completely legal, but you know what I'm saying? So Nevada and Washington State, in my mind, don't fully have legalization yet. Washington State doesn't allow any home grow. Nevada, in effect, won't be allowing any home grow. Their rule is if you live within 25 miles of a pot shop, can't home grow. Well, Nevada, where is there to live? Las Vegas, Reno, Carson City, Lake Tahoe, Winnemucca, right? There's just a few places to live in Nevada. And if you're anywhere near an urban center, if there's a place to get groceries, there's probably going to be a pot shop. And then you won't be able to buy. And this isn't just, me pulling numbers out of the department of my ass. In Arizona, same kind of rule with medical, 25-mile rule. 97% of the population lives within these 25-mile halos. So yeah, there might be some guy out in a bunker in the middle of Area 51 out there somewhere that can grow his own weed in Nevada, but not anybody else. So to me, those are severe problems with legalization, because to me, the problem of this, and it's not because it's the man's taking our business, right? I don't give a damn who gets rich in legalizing marijuana. I don't care. The money part's not interesting to me. The interesting part of this to me is stopping the punishment of people over a plant. And so that's got to include cultivating it. We got to stop punishing people for cultivating it as well as selling it or using it. So in Nevada, where you're going to maintain these penalties, severe penalties, for people who cultivate marijuana, and then allow others to cultivate it and sell it to them, that's even worse. That's even worse than the busting everybody who grows. Now you've basically set up a regulatory capture. You've set up a market that's dependent on these growers. Keith Stroup said it best so many years ago that home grow is the only check we have on corporations and governments overtaxing or selling us terrible weed, whatever, or overcharging, overpricing it. Where do we have the lowest marijuana prices in the nation? State of Oregon. Why? We have a whole bunch of home grow here. And home grow has been enshrined throughout our medical program for years. And that competition is what keeps the price low. It's also a check on overregulation. You begin overregulating the product to the point where it gets more expensive or too much of a problem for people to have to deal with, then they'll just go back to doing things the underground market way. This Nevada program also features the nation's, of all the legalized states, the nation's only criminal public toking penalties. Right? Like they make a big deal of the fact that, in Colorado, Washington State, Oregon, California, all these states that have passed legalization still ban public toking. And there's still a big hue and cry over what is public and can there be pot lounges and all of that. But the penalties they have are civil. You can get like a $100 ticket, $200 ticket, whatever it might be. Not Nevada. Nevada, it's a $600 no arrest criminal misdemeanor that escalates to the point where I think fourth strike, it actually becomes arrestable and you can serve jail time for it, for public toking. Now, you understand why they're doing that. It's the whole gaming industry not wanting the smell of marijuana wafting over the Las Vegas Strip. And they're going to do the same thing when it comes to the zoning, too. They're going to zone it so there won't be pot shops right there on the Strip. You'll be going off a few blocks to go get your weed. Because they don't see legalization like we see it. We see legalization as, finally, we've escaped our bondage. Finally, we are equals with our fellow beer drinkers. No, that ain't it. They don't see it that way at all. They just see it as, okay, fine, we'll stop busting you. But we don't want to see you. Stay in your closet, you stinky hippies with your patchouli smell and your pot odor. And that's what it's bigotry, really. It's just cultural bigotry. It's a method of enshrining their culture, their alcohol culture, their pill culture as the superior culture. It's a means of keeping natural healing and natural practitioners down. You ever notice that the drugs that are legal in this country are the ones white people can profit from? Right? The drugs that grow in the places where the brown people control, the cocaine and the heroin and the marijuana, place that come from a little farther south, if you get my drift, those are a problem. But all these synthetic chemicals you can manufacture, that a pharmaceutical company with a board of directors that's largely white men, hell, yeah, that's perfectly legal. That's perfectly okay. You saw it today in Trump's budget requests. I want to shift gears a little bit. Because I've been saying since Trump's election, I've been like the guy in Game of Thrones, right? Winter is coming. Winter is coming. And I've had people in my articles that I've written online, on my shows, in my chat rooms, Russ, you're an alarmist. You're such an alarmist. Nothing's happened yet. They're just saying shit. Nothing's really been doing. Watch what they do. It's not, it's just, the sky is falling. You're Chicken Little. And drip by drip by drip, I keep getting proven right. And the latest thing I'm proven right on is Trump's budget request. Requesting more money for the ONDCP and the DEA and the high-intensity drug trafficking areas and the drug-free communities grants. Pledging a 56% to 44% budget balanced toward law enforcement and what we call supply reduction, and 44% toward what we call demand reduction, treatment and prevention. Now, they'll always tout how, we're adding more money for prevention. We're adding more money for drug treatment centers, which is usually true. They're adding more money for that. But they're adding more money for everything, and much more money in proportion being added to law enforcement. This high-intensity drug trafficking agency, that's the one like the Rocky Mountain one that always comes out with that legalization in Colorado has caused kids to go to emergency rooms and dropouts to happen and more wrecks on the freeway. And they're the ones that are always hyping the worst phantom statistics they can put together. Look, there was marijuana there and people died, therefore marijuana caused it. No, that's not quite the way stats work, but okay. Those guys are going to get more money. And then the drug-free communities grants, those were the kind of grants that Kevin Sabet got paid from when he came to Oregon trying to fight Oregon marijuana legalization, his little education tour that I had to do all the Freedom of Information Act requests, open records requests here in Oregon. Found out he got paid $3,000 a stop and he was scheduled for 13 stops, $39,000 he would have made from these drug-free community grants largely that are granted down to the states and the counties. They're usually the Multnomah County Anti-Drug Force or the Malheur County Drug Prevention Group or whatever. And they can spend these educational funds that are really largely propaganda, anti-drug propaganda, not rooted in science or evidence from the states that have legalized or had medical marijuana. Those guys are getting more money too. In fact, the high-intensity drug trafficking areas and the drug-free communities grants got the highest requested funding ever. Trump's going to fund those. This is his request. Congress has to approve it. You know, the all-Republican Congress that's in his back pocket. He has requested more for those two agencies, those two parts of the budget, than any president before. The two parts of the drug war budget that have the most impact on fighting against marijuana legalization initiatives. The two big propaganda arms to put out negative information about marijuana are getting the biggest budget funding request ever. I'm just saying, don't tell me I'm an alarmist. More drug war is coming, folks.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
This is Cannabis Facts from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org, supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. In 1937, the second most prescribed medicine, marijuana, was banned. It wasn't about marijuana. The paper, oil, and chemical industries lobbied to end hemp farming. No longer labor intensive, an acre of hemp produced more quality paper than 4 acres of trees. Plastics and fibers could be produced from a plant. Hemp can even produce 10 times the energy of today's ethanol. As marijuana prohibition ends, many states now allow farmers to again grow hemp. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to process America's hemp crop at hempinc.com.
The Marijuana Agenda. Kevin Sabet's boogeyman since 2012.
You have offended my family, and you have offended Shaolin Temple.
Yes, might have gotten away with it, too. If it wasn't for these blasted kids and their dogs.
I'm Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 4 weeks for the Northwest Cannabis Chronicle from the Marijuana Business Association. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
I have a package here for Radical Rick. Is there a Radical Rick here? How about a Rick Ruth? Any Rick Russ? Somebody named Freddie Barack has sent him a package. Anybody? What is that? Sounds like a skunk. It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
All right, couple other things on my mind here in the news world to get to. I saw a tweet come across that the CBS News put out. For the second time this year, a coroner's office in Ohio ran out of
marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users
excuse me, the flux capacitor here.
Death. Marijuana is the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind. If the hideous monster Frankenstein came face-to-face with the monster of marijuana, he dropped dead of fright.
You know, it's not easy trying to debunk 80 years of anti-marijuana propaganda in a 1-hour podcast, but let's try. It's time for the Marijuana Agenda's Reefer Madness Debunked.
All right, I forgot that I was going to get into this Reefer Madness segment here because I spent the weekend attacking the legacy of Harry J. Anslinger. Those of you who don't know, Harry J. Anslinger was a former prohibition cop back during the alcohol prohibition days and worked his way up the bureaucracy to become quite important in that regard during the 13 years of alcohol prohibition. And after alcohol prohibition ended in 1933, that bureau, those cops, including Harry Anslinger, didn't have anything to do. Alcohol was then legal. So Anslinger and his buddies helped to promote the creation of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Now, from 1911 all the way through 1937, in addition to alcohol being prohibited in 1920, 1933, but from 1911 through 1937, the states were prohibiting cannabis. They calling it marijuana to do so, starting with Massachusetts in 1911, California 1913, New York 1914, leading all the way up to 1937, when by the time 1937 rolls around, all 48 states had already made marijuana illegal. Well, Harry J. Anslinger was the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and he knew that if he could get people hyped up on this threat of marijuana, that would be job security. Federal Bureau of Narcotics would have something to do. And it's remarkable when you look at it from the perspective of, rating evil geniuses, if you will, that Harry J. Anslinger held that post from 1937 to 1962. From FDR to JFK, 25 years, a quarter century, the first quarter century of our drug policies set by Harry Anslinger, particularly our marijuana policies. By the way, the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, its 80th anniversary is August 2nd. So we'll do something special on that show. And at the end of his career, Anslinger, his crowning achievement was the adoption by the United Nations and most of the countries in it of the 1961 Single Convention Treaty on Narcotic Drugs. This is the worldwide treaty that makes cannabis and most other drugs that we consider illegal drugs. This is the worldwide treaty that makes them illegal and makes it so the countries that are a part of this treaty have to make it illegal. So in remembrance of Harry J. Anslinger and his contribution to Reefer Madness, this weekend I created a Twitter account called @Anslinger's Ghost. And what inspired me, I was actually looking to satirize this group. And there's a real group out there called Parents Opposed to Pot. And their website is poppot.org. Okay, think about that for a second. Parents Opposed to Pot. And their website is poppot.org. So doesn't that make it Parents Opposed to Pot? Or maybe it's Parents Opposed to Pot, Parents Opposed to Truth. But whatever, pot. I was just going to satirize these guys because some of the stuff they were saying on their website sounded so much like Harry Anslinger that I started looking up Harry Anslinger quotes to match to what they were saying. And then as I was doing it, this was Saturday, as I was doing it, I'm like, wait a minute. isn't today Harry Anslinger's birthday? And sure enough, it was. So I spent the weekend going through this Parents Opposed to Pot website. And you really have to read through a few of their pages to realize that it's not something out of The Onion, right? It reads as if it's some sort of like satirical site, but no, this is the real deal, folks. It's an anti-marijuana legalization advocacy group, and it's got the backing of people like Julie Shower. You remember her? She's that anti-pot millionaire out there in Pennsylvania, donated a bunch of money, 7 figures to Project Sam in California. So let me give you some of the quotes. This is amazing. It's just amazing stuff, right? This is from the Pop Pot site. Reefer madness is not an invention. A subset of the population develops psychosis and schizophrenia from using marijuana. No one has figured out who it is and or what the genetic markers might be. Estimates vary, but those susceptible to pot psychosis range from 3% with the marijuana of the 70s. Now, who has this marijuana of the 70s anymore? Right? Why even mention that? I've been saving this in a bag since 1972. Let's smoke a little of it. Anyway, let me continue. To 25% of the population with the marijuana of today. That's right. According to Pop Pot, 1 out of 4 pot smokers today will suffer schizophrenia or psychosis. 1 out of 4. With dabbing, edibles, and other forms used today, that rate may go up to 50%. 50%, folks. Pop Pot, Parents Opposed to Pop Pot, are trying to tell people half of the people who dab will go psychotic. And they conclude by saying, how do we know who can go mad from using marijuana? The truth is, we don't know until it happens. Jeez. Okay, so anybody smoking pot, any moment, 1 out of 4 of them smoking pot, 1 out of 2 of them smoking dabs, just like that could go psychotic. Harry J. Anslinger was a bit more florid in his description. His quote, marijuana is a shortcut to the insane asylum. Smoke marijuana cigarettes for a month, and what was once your brain will be nothing but a storehouse of horrid specters. Hashish makes a murderer who kills for the love of killing out of the mildest mannered man who ever laughed at the idea that any habit could ever get him. See? I mean, Pop Pot, Harry Anslinger, damn near the same thing, right? Here's Pop Pot on the marijuana doesn't kill anybody, right? They're not having any of that. Because Pop Pot has actually documented all the people whose pot use led them to suicide. Yeah, they got a list. Suicides caused by pot. This is from their site. They say, quote, according to a program of Dr. Drew Pinsky back in 2003, there is an extraordinarily high incident of suicide in the first 6 months of marijuana abstinence. Oh, well, it was on a Dr. Drew show 14 years ago. Oh, well then. These youths banish the claim that mental health problems always come before marijuana use. A strong misconception is that mental illness after using pot only affects those with previous mental health issues. The deaths described here include active psychotic reactions at the time of marijuana use, as well as depression from long-term use. Couldn't be that they were depressed or psychotic and then sought out marijuana. No, they deny that. Of course, Anslinger warned us that this was going to happen. Anslinger said, marijuana is an addictive drug which produces in its users insanity, criminality, and death. Look, if there was a high incidence of mental health problems, mental illness, suicide, psychosis, schizophrenia attributed to pot use, if it were as high as 1 out of 4, and according to the statistics, 1 out of 5 people college age are smoking pot monthly. Doesn't that make it like 1 out of 20 college students every month would be going psychotic? You do the math on that? Oh, wait, they might be dabbing. Could be 1 out of 10. Let's go on. Pop Pot also says that sometimes these psycho dopers are going to turn to guns on others. Here's from Pop Pot. What triggers school violence? To seek revenge and kill oneself after a disappointment is not normal. These youth came from the states that had legalized marijuana. Marijuana needs to be added to our discussion of what causes mass violence, along with violence in the media, access to guns, violent video games, etc. Mass shooters James Holmes and Jared Loughner were known to be marijuana users and not moderate in their use. Marijuana averages 13% THC today, opposed to 1 to 3% in the 70s and 80s. Did marijuana feed their psychosis and the psychopathology of Freiberg, Pearson, the Columbine killers, and others? Okay, first, I know some of the folks in my chat room are old enough to have been smoking weed in the 70s and 80s. I never did. I didn't smoke weed till 1992. So can you tell me about this 1 to 3% marijuana you were smoking in the 70s, guys? I saw the Cheech and Chong movies of the 80s. Cheech and Chong were smoking 1 to 3% THC? Because if I recall, that's damn near industrial hemp, right? Really. Cheech and Chong in those movies were smoking 1 to 3% THC. Sure. Just sure they were. Yeah. And all that great music of the 70s, all that awesome music of the 70s, the guys smoking weed and writing those were just smoking 1 to 3% THC weed. Yeah. Sure they were. What else they got in here? Well, here's the Anslinger version of that same quote. Anslinger version. How many murders, suicides, robberies, criminal assaults, holdups, burglaries, and deeds of maniacal insanity it causes each year, especially among the young, can only be conjectured. No one knows when he places a marijuana cigarette to his lips whether he will become a joyous reveler in a musical heaven, a mad insensate, a calm philosopher, or a murderer. Yeah, folks. So this is poppot.org. It's hilarious. I encourage everyone to check it out. It is literally the online embodiment of the spirit of Harry J. Anslinger. And also, don't forget to follow Anslinger's Ghost on Twitter. I will be using that account to give Harry Anslinger's perspective on drug reform throughout the day and whenever I come upon something interesting that Harry J. Anslinger should weigh in on. Also, speaking of Anslinger, when I was in Texas, I filmed a bit as Harry J. Anslinger. So I haven't heard back yet as to whether that's going to be released, but when I do, I will send you all the link. Stay tuned. We'll be back and wrap things up for today and give you a look at tomorrow in less than 2.5 minutes.
You're listening to the Marijuana Agenda with Russ Belville.
Hey everybody, it's Russ Belville from the Marijuana Agenda, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
It's time for Cannabis Facts about teen drug use from Robert Platshorn's thesilvertour.org. This message is supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. A recent survey by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control indicates that in states that have legalized medical marijuana, the rate of marijuana consumption among high school students has not increased. In fact, in legal states like Colorado, teen use has actually decreased significantly. It's simply no longer a big deal for teenagers in legal states. This was Cannabis Facts from thesilvertour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com.
The marijuana agenda, like the gay agenda, only with better music.
I'm Russ Belville with the Marijuana Agenda. Join me every 2 weeks for Police for Reform with Law Enforcement Action Partnership. Learn more at mjagenda.com/about.
Most of us pirates, we go on vacation to North Dakota, you know, because they've got a town called Argosville. Arr. What are you smoking there, boy?
It's time for Toker Talk Radio, the voice of the marijuana nation. Call in now at 650-LEGAL-MJ.
All right, welcome back. In our last segment, we were talking about some reefer madness out of poppot.org. Folks, there's so much reefer madness I couldn't fit it in one segment. That's how reefer mad these people are at poppot.org. I wanted to continue with some of the stuff in comparison to their ideological forebear, Harry J. Anslinger. So we last left off where marijuana use leads to psychosis among half the people who dab. It leads young people to commit suicide. And then the psychotic dopers turn the guns on others and become school shooters, right? So that's where we left off. Well, here's the other warning from Pop Pot, is that while marijuana may not kill the parents who smoke it, they in turn will kill their children. I know. Hold on. This is the quote from Pop Pot. Yes, marijuana does cause death. Not necessarily of the pot smoker, but of the tender little people in the home. Use of pot creates victims, including children who die from neglect or violence when parents, mothers' boyfriends, or caregivers use pot. We have been tracking news of child deaths linked to marijuana since November 2012. The columns show official causes of death related to the caregiver's marijuana use. We found news reports of 80 such deaths in 28 states. Actual numbers could be much higher. Violent neglect includes marijuana DUI, guns, and pit bulls. The last column includes infants who died shortly after birth. Okay, so we all know who these pit bull owners and mothers' boyfriends are, right? As Harry Anslinger warned back in the day, colored students at the University of Minnesota partying with white female students, smoking marijuana and getting their sympathy with stories of racial persecution. Result: pregnancy. There are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the U.S., and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz and swing, result from marijuana usage. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others. Now, folks at Pop Pot, they're not having it. The Pop Pot people are very sensitive to being called racists. They're going to trump your playing of the race card. They actually say in their top 10 lies of legalizers page, quote, marijuana was not banned because of racism. Massachusetts banned in 1911, long before Harvey Anslinger worked to ban marijuana around 1930. Anslinger is the pot industry's excuse to accuse those who are opposed to legalization with racism. It is an accusation that doesn't hold up to scrutiny. California banned it in 1913 and New York in 1914. Well, here's the funny thing about California in 1913. according to Dale Geringer out at California Normal, it's that they had a huge influx of marijuana-using Sikh laborers in their turbans and all, who the media mistakenly identified as Hindu, leading a prominent member of the California State Board of Pharmacy named Henry J. Finger to write to Anslinger's predecessor, a guy named Hamilton Wright, the following warning, quote, this is 1913. Within the last year, we in California have been getting a large influx of Hindus, and they have in turn started quite a demand for cannabis indica. They are a very undesirable lot, and the habit is growing in California very fast. The fear is now that they are initiating our whites into this habit. Yeah, no, not racist at all, huh? Happy birthday to Harry J. Anslinger, who I imagine is currently suffering repeated sodomizations with red-hot titanium nails by dreadlock dab demons who are hotboxing his cubicle in the Nixon wing of hell, comforted only by the knowledge that his ideological spawn lives on in parents opposed to pot.
Follow MJ Agenda on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and SoundCloud. And follow MJ Agenda Show on Twitter. Learn more at mjagenda.com.
That's all the time we got for today. For everyone here at Delta 9 Studios in beautiful legal Portland, Oregon, I'm Radical Russ. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.